All right, I'm sitting here with Megan Wilkes and Mary Sparks. Did you say Sparks?
Yeah.
Sparks, okay. All right, I thought I might have heard that wrong. So Megan and Mary started Emporium Pie Companies how many years ago?
It's been 8 years since we started the company, but it's been 7 years since we've had our business open.
Okay.
Storefront.
All right, so you've been selling pie for 7 years.
8 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you just didn't have a storefront.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in Dallas, so you have a location, Dallas and Bishop Arts. You have a location in McKinney, and then you have one which is north of Dallas, and then a location in Deep Ellum.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Cool. And we are currently at your office. This is headquarters. This is the
seat of the empire.
Yeah. So what? I guess that's a good question. People may not think of like a pie shop as having a central office, a headquarters. Like what necessitates having a central location for you guys?
That is a long story, but it starts when we first opened. We opened up in a tiny little 700 square foot house on the first floor, and our kitchen was only about 110 square feet. And so we baked as many pies as we could, but we quickly would run out every day, and it clearly was not great for business in several different ways. Obviously, we were leaving money on the table, but we were also disappointing our guests. So we knew we had to build a bigger kitchen somewhere.
And Megan officed in the closet.
Yeah, I had with the cups and everything, I had literally like 1 foot by 1 foot square to sit in. So we did that for as long as we could until we had saved enough money to build a kitchen offsite. And this is actually our second offsite kitchen. Our first one was just one big room where we cooked, and now we have a place to cook in an office.
Oh, nice. So let's maybe back up a little bit. The two of you are obviously partners in the business. Kind of who does what, and how did you end up in those roles?
I oversee the back of house operations, all of the recipe development and production, and kitchen staff and distribution. And kind of organize that side of the business.
And I kind of run the business from the perspective of the front of house and all of the behind the scenes, doing the books and projections and kind of the stuff that is the nitty gritty that it takes to like move forward in the business.
Yeah, when I tell people when they say, "Well, what do you do if your business partners make the beer and sell the beer?" And I said, "I just do taxes and insurance."
Yeah, basically.
Like, oh, okay.
All day.
Yeah. Okay, so Mary, do you have a culinary background, or like how did you become the pie maker?
I have a restaurant industry background, but I didn't really get into baking until after I moved out of my parents' house. But I've been working in restaurants since I was 16. But I just kind of taught myself to bake. I worked at a bakery, and I was asking the owner there whether I should go to culinary school or not. And she was like, yeah, you can teach yourself to bake. You should. Because I'd already done some college, just finished going for business, and ended up going for hospitality management, which has
helped us a lot. It's helped a lot.
Yeah. So that's kind of my background.
So okay, hospitality management. Mm-hmm. I normally think of that as being like hotels. Is it?
It's restaurant and hotels.
Restaurant and
mm-hmm.
hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what do you what do you learn when you get a hospitality degree? I'm just kind of curious. I've never asked this.
You have there's a basic kitchen prep task, so there is some actual cooking and baking. You learn how to cost out recipes and there's a hospitality accounting that's specific to the hospitality industry. You have to design a kitchen, and you have to run the restaurant at the school, things like that. So you do get a variety of experience, and you meet some cool people who can help, that have helped us, being able to reach out to friends who are in the hospitality industry and learn some things about business from them. So yeah.
So, okay, whenever you talk to people in the restaurant business, it's always cost of food. And I guess, I don't know, people just know their labor is going to be high. But do you guys look at it the same way? Do you look at yourselves more as a restaurant or more as a manufacturer? And kind of how do you look at sort of managing costs and making sure that you're able to, be profitable, keep the lights on?
It's a really interesting question because it plays out in a lot of different ways. Our first store is in the Bishop Arts District, and a lot of the businesses down there are either a restaurant or they're all restaurant or all retail. And the retailers usually make most of their items, but there are some who just buy things for market, sell it, So we kind of ride the line between the two, and it's been interesting to see. I feel like it's given our business kind of a leg up there where we have some more longevity than some of the people who are just going to market and buying things. And maybe even a little bit more than some of the restaurants, because restaurants have to constantly be reinventing themselves to be what people want at the time. And I think for us to ride the line between retail and restaurant works out pretty well for us. But from our end, when we opened the pie shop, we had both worked in hospitality before, Mary more than me, but we both knew that we don't count labor as part of our food cost, because we tend to try to make our labor is a little bit higher because of the way that we choose to pay people. So we cost things out by food. We try to save money there. We obviously clearly can't just pay ridiculous amounts of money for labor, so we have to be careful with that too. But we try to be creative with how we do our labor. Pie is also a really labor intensive thing to make. Our front of house labor is neither here nor there. We put
it on a plate.
Yeah, it's a difficult job for a lot of reasons, but the price of the labor is not a big deal in comparison with what the stores sell. Having 3 stores that purchase pies from a commissary kitchen makes it difficult to track what our actual labor is on the sale of the pie, So basically in our back of house, we try to do as close to or actually a living wage and offer benefits and that kind of thing, because we feel like all in all, our labor costs might be a little higher, but we're able to take better care of people, which help us sleep at night. But it also means that people usually stay around a little bit longer than they do in other restaurant industry, which saves us money on training in the long run. So It's like a big loop. But our labor costs are pretty high. Our cost of good is really high. Making pie is difficult. It has several different processes. And if you don't use a bunch of machines to do it, then it's a lot of human hours. So especially not using canned pie filling. So
okay.
Hard.
So I was I eventually figured this out, but I wanted to ask you to have you explain it. I was in the back and I saw a massive 50 or maybe even multiple 55-gallon buckets that were full of beans.
Well, we also have a side business where we make refried beans.
Yeah, I was I thought this was a pie shop. Why is there 55 gallons of beans in the back?
Why do you think we have 50?
I'm thinking they're for pie weights.
Yes,
okay.
That's it.
Pie weights are really expensive and they're metal. So if you have a pie weight that gets in the crust and somebody bites into it, they are going to hurt their mouth. Yeah. And they're $1 jillion. And for the amount of pie we make, we can't.
No, so we just throw the beans out, get new beans every few weeks. But when people first start, there was a girl, one of our first employees, who couldn't figure out why we had beans, but nobody would tell her.
We have a lot of things that when people start that we have running jokes. We used to put the Cloud 9 filling looks like a vat of fat when you're done with it. It's a nude color, generic nude color. And we cover it with cling wrap to keep it from getting a film on top of it. Mm-hmm. And so it's stuck directly to the custard. So when we get new people, when we were all cooking at the same place and working at the same place, all the front of house people had no idea why it was covered or what it was. And so we would make them slap it.
We told them it was activating the custard, like it was some culinary trick that they had to do.
It was the best. But the beans are kind of a joke too, because if you let people wait for a little while till they figure it out themselves, then there's always and you have to walk past them to get into the kitchen. So you're
yeah, and it's a big part of training, do not let the beans get in the pie, because it's a really awkward situation when a customer finds a bean in their lure of the pies and they have no idea why a bean would ever be near one of their pies.
Yeah, but you do have to weight down the crust somehow. And pro tip, you heard it here first, beans. Weighs them down.
Okay,
Yep.
so
Dry beans, not like a can of beans.
So yes, that should be clarified for anyone who's watching or listening that these are dry, uncooked beans.
Yes.
And so the pie weights, you put them on the crust when you're, what's the term for it? Par baking or pre-baking?
Yeah. It just basically tricks a raw crust into thinking there's filling in it, so it doesn't fall into the pie pan.
Or
Okay.
rice.
And so we do like a first round with the beans in, you take them out, and then finish baking the crust all the way through.
Okay, so what is your top selling pie?
Ooh, right now, it's the chocolate, but it's always back and forth. The smooth
operator? That's my
French silk
favorite.
chocolate with pretzel crust, but it's always back and forth between that and then deep dish apple.
Classic American.
Yep, people love them.
Okay, so from an ingredient or perspective, can you maybe tell us a little bit? So you said pretzel crust, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you achieve a pretzel crust without giving away too many trade secrets?
Well, it's a lot like a graham cracker crust, but with pretzels.
Oh, okay. So it's not. So it's like you use like dried pretzels and you make it like
we
a
use
okay.
we use a brand of pretzels that doesn't have any like additives or preservatives or weird things in it, and we have a giant mill in there used for milling flour, but we use it to grind up our pretzels, and then we use it for pie crust.
That was like a trial and error thing because as we scaled up, Mary started out making all of our stuff in our kitchens and her home kitchen, like for testing and everything. So as we scaled up, we'd be like, well, we need a bigger food processor so that we can make all of these crusts. Yeah. And so then we had like 18 food processors, and so we'd be like, brr, 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 all the way down. Yeah, now we have a grain mill.
we ran into a similar situation when we were trying to scale up. So we have a plutonium, which is our coconut porter. And when you're just making a test batch, like a 5-gallon batch, it takes 2 like half sheets, so like basically like a sheet worth of coconut that you have to toast. And then we scale that up to a 100-gallon batch. And Jeremy had access to a commercial kitchen, so I think he used like a convection oven with like multiple shelves, and so he was able to do, and so you're going from 5 to 100, so that's 20 times. So now you're looking at 20 sheets worth of coconuts and toasted. And then then we scaled it up to a 1,000-gallon batch, and we're like, there's no way that we can do 200, so it'd be like 400 half sheet pans of toasted coconut. We like did the math on it, and it would have taken like 2 or 3 days. And so we ended
unless you're here with our giant oven.
So we reached out to a supplier that had like I don't know, some sort of tumble roaster or something that they used to roast it. And actually we ended up getting it cheaper pre-roasted than we were paying before, so it all worked out. But
yeah, it's weird to scale up. We had that same thing with apples. We would use apple peelers that like you put on the counter and you
crank.
So we were using those up until like 2 years ago.
And then I sliced my finger open.
Yeah, the day before we opened, she sliced her finger really hard. And I was
Megan hot glued it together for me.
Yeah. Well, it was super glue, and I was like, lay down, I'm gonna glue us together.
Glue.
We don't have
definitely not hot glue.
We don't have time for this.
Doing like World War II field soldier stuff.
Yeah. I'm like, lay down, put your finger above your head. You got about 30 minutes before you
get back to it. Yeah.
But you always scale up. We don't use the little thing anymore. We bought this big machine that does that on a bigger scale.
We called it Wolverine, but it can, how many apples in it? Like
way more than
16 apples
can.
In a minute or something like that.
We're like, hand peeling apples does not add anything to the pie flavor.
No.
It just makes it more expensive.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. How did the two of you meet?
Well, I thought it would be fun to open a pie shop, which it has been, but it has been more than I thought it was going to be. I moved here from Oklahoma City, and I didn't want to do what I went to college for. So I was like, I'm going to open a bakery. I want to open a pie shop specifically. And so I was talking to my friend Alex, and she was like, that sounds great. I'll help you. And I was like, great. You bake a lot. She was like, oh, I'm not a baker. I can't do that. And I was like, okay. She was like, well, I have a friend named Mary who has won some awards, some prestigious awards for her cookies that were delicious. They are delicious. And so we met. She introduced us at the Amsterdam bar. And then she was like, well, I'm going to go be an au pair in France for a year. And by the time she came back, we had a pie shop. We were like, well, you can work here if you want. So that's how it worked. It was pretty great. Yep. From that moment forward, though, I think it was kind of like whenever you pick the right person to marry, you know that you can trust them and that they're not going to let you down. And we both kind of just really fully trusted each other in that. And it's been a really good relationship. I call her my pie wife.
Mm-hmm.
I feel, because I don't know. I've definitely heard mixed advice on should you have a partner, should you not have a partner. I like it. I feel like you have an obligation because there's some days when you just wake up and you're like, I don't feel like doing this, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But then you're like, no, I have an obligation to, a partner, investors, or employees that I have to fulfill. So no, I gotta get some stuff done.
I gotta get up and go do it, even though I don't want to.
Okay, so what did you go to college for?
I went to school for interior design, and then I got my master's in international business. Yeah. So I use my interior design degree often for the pie shop. I went straight from college into a job doing construction management, and so I learned a lot of skills in that, but then that I can use in business. But I also learned how to build things really effectively and inexpensively. So I do all the planning and design work and work with the city to get all of our plans and licenses, and then I build all of our pie shops. So
that's
saves us a lot of money.
Fun working with the city, is it?
Oh, it's just a blast. But our pie scoop truck was actually a breeze to get through. So
did they pass some new legislation, or was this because you're not preparing? I think that's where the issue, right? If you have a food truck and you're preparing food, then you have to be full.
So it is so because we're scooping ice cream on there, we do have to. We have to have a full kitchen and stuff like that. But
it's like the hand wash scene.
Yeah. So we do have to have that. All of them have to have hand wash, but we have to have all that. But the cool part about it is that we had to have a variance because our truck is really tiny. It's really cute and tiny. But usually, when the city of Dallas, when you're doing a building and you need a variance or something, it's you have to take it to City Hall and do all this other stuff. And it's obnoxious.
Board of Adjustment.
Yeah,
and all that,
wild. And takes months and months and months. So I prepared for that for the truck, but we really didn't have to do that at all. It was, I just had to fill out the paperwork and that's it. And really? The lady called me and she was like, what are you going to be doing? And I was like, well, literally the only thing we'll have to wash on there is ice cream scoops. Everything else is going to be either packaged at our commissary or whatever. And so she was like, okay, well, you got to print out this thing I'm going to send you and hang it up next to your health permit and you're done. It was easy. It took 3 weeks, I think, for my entire permit from start to finish. It was like a breath of fresh air. Yeah. Sounds like it. So where does the truck go? Does it kind of park at certain locations, or is it old school ice cream truck route, with music playing going down the street? There will definitely be music playing, but it is a park and setup situation, more like a food truck. Yeah. Because we're going to hand scoop each bit of ice cream. That's a big part of our whole ethos as a company is that we could slice all the pie here and have 2 people working at the front of house at any given time and just throw a piece of pie over the counter at you. But a big part of our brand and of the way that we like to serve people is to actually serve people. And so we slice every single piece of pie as it's ordered so that we can you kind of have that hands-on experience of somebody is taking care of you. So we're going to scoop the ice cream the same way. Me and Mary personally, probably for a while, will be scooping the ice cream.
So this ice cream is a new thing for you guys, right?
Yes.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit of what goes into making the ice cream?
A lot of milk and cream. We have a small batch pasteurizer that we actually make our own mix in, and then that has to age overnight, and then we batch freeze it, which is the machine. A lot of people have home ice cream makers. We just have a giant version of that, and then that's just our basic ice cream. But we are also mixing in flavors and pie and just kind of adding on from there.
It's basically chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream but instead of cookie dough, it's pie.
Yes, which the cookie dough always makes me sick to my stomach. I don't know, for some reason.
It's really sweet.
But I want to try the pie. I haven't tried it yet. So why do you have to? So you're buying pasteurized milk products, right? Why do you have to? Are you adding other raw ingredients that you have to pasteurize it again?
Well, there are raw eggs in it. Egg yolks.
So it's like a custard base.
Yeah, it's like a custard base. And the machine we have, it will heat it up and hold it there for 30 minutes just to kill off any any chance of bacteria there is,
Right.
and then it will cool it back down really quickly so it doesn't stay in, like, you don't have that weird danger zone going on. So,
and it's also like state law. So all of your products, even if you are mixing like pasteurized raw eggs, because you can buy the pre-pasteurized yolks and all that, even if you're mixing pasteurized raw eggs into the milk and stuff like that, the final mixed product has to be pasteurized. So a lot of
they were like, it was exposed to the atmosphere at some point. You had hands in it.
yeah.
So if ice cream, if an ice cream maker doesn't have a pasteurizer, then they're buying. In the state of Texas, they require you to buy a mix from Borden or whatever milk supplier.
So essentially, you could buy essentially like a custard mix, pour it in a freezer,
and then you've made your own ice cream.
You made your own ice cream.
A lot of people do that.
But if you buy 2 mixes and you pour them in at the same, if you were to pour an egg mix and a milk mix, that would not be legal.
Yeah,
right.
Not legal, but both ways you get to, But we also were really heavy on the idea that we have got to build our own mix because Mary is a perfectionist when it comes to products that have our name on it, which is amazing. But also there's something about being able to control. If we're going to put our pie into it, we know our pie is a certain level of deliciousness. Like, we need that ice cream to be at that level as well. And so, rather than like having to deal with figuring out all these different mixes and all that kind of stuff, we're like, we'll just make our own. It'll be good.
Yeah, and I feel like the more times you buy things pre-mixed, just the more crap they
the ingredient list just gets weird.
Yeah.
I was checking out some stuff that's available, and I was reaching out to the local dairies to see if they could pasteurize the mix for us, and then we buy, like, if I give them a recipe, they pasteurize that for us and we buy it from them. But there's nobody local that does it. They have like places in California you can do that kind of stuff with, but here we just had to make it ourselves.
Yeah, for us too, I feel like your ice cream mix situation, I feel like you can end up paying so much more to have something customized whenever you're not going to be able to actually get the results that you want. Because, say you have something and it's like cooking anything, the humidity, all different kinds of things can start to affect stuff. So you want to be able to tweak it on as you go.
Yeah.
But then also, we don't ever put extra preservatives or anything like that. The preservative that's in our pie is sugar. So, and we don't dye things usually, except for one pie that we have, the Dr. Love. It's red velvet. Red velvet has dye in it.
Yeah.
Pro tip, everything red has dye in it. It doesn't fit with our ethos to do stuff that has a lot of extra business in it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Emporium pies. I know where the pie part of that name comes from, but where does Emporium come from?
we had like multiple sessions of like drunk naming things on our porch. We have like
I wish I could find those lists
and lists of names. Most of them were puns.
Yeah.
Pie hard with a vengeance.
Get rich or pie trying.
Yeah. Get rich or die pieing. All of those things. But we liked Emporium because it is reminiscent of something that will like serve a lot of things. It's nostalgic, but it also like means a place that serves a lot of different things. So we're going to serve a variety of pies. But then you also think about Emporiums were kind of like soda fountains, and it was on the street corner of people's little towns. And I think that it kind of drums up this kind of quaint small town feeling. And I know that Bishop Arts, especially when we first opened, had that feeling. So it fit right in. And I feel like people can still say that when they come into one of our shops, they feel it's kind of nostalgic and like you're getting a hug. So it works.
Okay, so I'm going to say this so that you guys don't have to feel humble and try to... But your pie is fantastic. And it's delicious. I mean, everyone says it's the best pie they've ever had. I haven't been to your Deep Ellum or your McKinney locations because I live next to Bishop Arts. So anytime I'm in Bishop Arts, there's like a line going down the street and people are just waiting in line for however long because the pie is that good. So the brand is that good or the whatever. So I wanted to kind of leave that a little bit more open-ended and kind of get each one of your takes on what has allowed you to build the fan base that you have and has given you the success that you have. Do you want to start, Mary?
I think it's I mean, as you can tell, we have very different skill sets, but we have a similar vision. So I think combining those things really takes it to another level. If I just had a bakery by myself, there'd be like a cardboard sign on the front door and just me in the back making pie. So I think it takes a team to do something really well, because you just can't be good at everything. So I think that's part of it. And I think we put a lot of our personality into what we do. Our pies have names, and the design that Megan does for the stores. I don't know, Megan, what do you think?
I think it's all those things. I think that teamwork plays a part in it. I think we started out really early, setting out some really serious, like, here's lines that we won't cross kind of things. We have always and will always make all of our pies by hand and from scratch. And we are consistent. And so I feel like people come to the pie shop, they taste something that's delicious, and then they come back again and again, and it's consistent. But I think there's also the hospitality aspect of it that we both love being a part of. And we hire people that are good at it too, and who understand that it's important to take care of people. And we've had our share of missteps. I mean, there's always the time where you should have just said, I'm sorry that you didn't like your experience, here's your money back, and somebody gets mad about it. And then there's times when there's a pie that sneaks through that was burned or not right or sat on the shelf too long. And but we're always really quick to correct those things too. So I think it's a whole package deal, being really consistent, but also knowing when to say, oh, we missed the mark here, let's take care of you a little bit better.
So maybe let's deep dive a little bit into kind of what makes a store. From the storefront to the furniture on the inside to the music to, I guess you don't have to pump in a lot of smell because it's a pie shop, but just kind of to you, what makes a store make somebody want to come back?
Consistent product is important. Cleanliness, I think, is more important than anything else. Like, we could have an amazing brand, but if it's not clean, it doesn't matter. So cleanliness, and then making sure that from the time that someone steps in to the time that they leave, that it's a consistent experience. Somebody can stand in the line, have a wonderful time chatting with people in the line, get up to the register, it's great, and then they get their pie, but then whenever it's, they need an extra spoon, if somebody was rude to them whenever they asked for a spoon, then it ruins the whole experience. So making sure that the experience from start to finish is great, which includes the furniture and the chairs and all of that kind of stuff. There's a lot of thought that we put into it. We made our stores really small, and some people like it, some people don't. We still make it small because you want the person who comes in on Tuesday, who's the only person in the pie shop, to still feel like they're in a quaint little pie shop and not like they're in Billy Bob's, Texas.
Yeah.
So,
I can imagine that would be awkward.
Yeah, to be in like a giant store and they're just, I feel like more and more we're working on making spaces that are huge, and they don't feel like they're on a human scale. Yeah. And even when the place is packed, people still keep coming in the door because I think it's even better when it's packed, because people are like, oh, this place has something, and there's so many people there. I want to be a part of that. And I think that that's a big part of it too, is making sure that it's scaled to where people will be comfortable, whether there's 5 people in there or 35, I think, is our maximum occupancy. Yeah.
Misty and I went to a restaurant in Paris, and I don't think they have the same like fire marshal, like fire laws that we have here, because we were in this restaurant that was so tiny. I mean, it was, I'm trying to even describe how, it was literally, you were physically touching someone on your left and your right. And even to get into that chair, like, people had to lean and you had to almost sit in their lap to squeeze into this spot. But I mean, it was a great experience. I mean, we were like friends, we were like making plans with the people next to us before we went out, and we had no problem with them. The food was delicious. It was awesome. So
I think that I think one of the things that is a little bit, if we're going to go real deep, one of the things I think that's a little bit wrong with our society nowadays is that everybody is so keen on having so much of their own space. that we end up not spending time together. A good example of that is like there aren't porches. People didn't really build porches after 1950. And they built big backyards with giant back decks to sit on, but they're sitting back there alone. But I used to live in Winnetka Heights. We had a porch and we'd sit out there and people would wave at you when you walk by and stuff like that, which can be exhausting sometimes. But at the same time, you're sharing a space with people. And I think that there is something to be said about that. I think that's part of the reason that a lot of people like to come from the suburbs to visit Bishop Park specifically, but also Deep Ellum and McKinney. Our McKinney store in the little square, they like that because everything is at such a close neighborly scale and you are forced to interact with people. And I think people like it a little bit more than they let on.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
And then they can go retreat.
Then you could go back to your 6,000 square foot house.
Yeah. And choose whether you want to sit in the den, the living room, or the media room, or the TV room.
Or the office, or do you want to sit on the back patio or side patio? Yeah.
You just start running out of, like, I wouldn't even be able to name all those rooms.
Well, I've always had this thing where, and right now I'm guilty of it in our current house. Hopefully we'll remedy that at some point. But if you don't go into a room at least once a day, and not like to just put away socks, but like go into that room and use it, then I don't think you really need it.
Yeah.
It's kind of my thing, you know?
Yeah. I almost think it would be cool if there were just like these sort of like storage units that you rent. You know, like if there was like one just like, cause so we live in an apartment now, and there's garages, and the garages are separate from the apartments. And so we started off with one garage, and then we needed another one, so we like rent another garage, and it's totally convenient. And if you don't need it anymore, you just don't have it anymore.
You're just gonna put it together.
It'd be kind of a cool concept.
Modular housing would be great. Yeah, have a baby, just add on a little room.
So what's next? Do you guys kind of back up? So we have this commissary kitchen here. Is the kitchen in this location maxed out, or could it support additional locations? Could you produce more?
I think that we could probably do 2 more locations at this kitchen, but we'd have to run it 24 hours. And then at Thanksgiving, we'd have to have some sort of other plan. Mm-hmm. Thanksgiving, so everything that we do in the kitchen is with the caveat of what does Thanksgiving look like? Because if you sell out of pie before Thanksgiving, people get mad. There's a queue. So we have to figure out how to satiate demand. And right now we are maxed out at Thanksgiving time here.
So what does Thanksgiving look like relative to kind of average business? Like, I don't know if you were to take, so
we
this
do
is
a
like
month.
a week.
We do almost a month worth of business in 3 days during Thanksgiving.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's like 10x.
Yeah. It's wild.
We start our prep in August.
Yeah. So it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's just the craziest time.
Mm-hmm.
It's super fun though, because everybody bands together. Having 3 different locations and then the pie palace, which is what we call the kitchen, you kind of have these separate cultures that develop, which can be wonderful and also kind of hard. But during the holiday season, all of those little cultures kind of merge, and we have people coming from the storefronts to help out the kitchen, and then the kitchen is in the storefronts a lot more, and it's really fun. It's a great time.
It's exhausting, but most people say it's their favorite time of year because it's.
And last year, only one person cried, and it was me because I was sick. So.
Okay, so
it can be overwhelming too. Like,
yes.
it is physically so taxing. People, we're all here all the time.
Okay, so so Mary, I'm sure you've learned a ton going through this over the past 8 years. If you could go back to the beginning, what is either one thing that you wish you had known or understood, or one thing that you might have done differently?
Oh, I think that that's a tough one. One thing I might have wished that I understood is to look at problems as like something creative to solve instead of feeling defeated by them, because that kind of is being a business owner. A lot of our job is just solving problems all the time, which I've learned to love. But in the beginning, I just kept thinking like, this isn't working, and then slowly kind of figured out like that's kind of the fun part, is learning to make it all work when it doesn't feel like it's working, and not getting defeated by it. Still have to tell myself that sometimes.
There was some quote that I heard the other day that said that I can't remember if it was Seth Godin or somebody, that feeling that you get that feels like defeat is the feeling you get right before you win, or something along those lines. And it's that sort of, you feel like, oh my goodness, this just is not going to work. And then it seems like the next day you hit some major milestone.
You figure it out, and then you're like on top of the world. Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of a high.
Yeah.
So one thing that you wish you understood, or that you would do differently?
I think that I wish I would have known how much of our jobs were going to be managing people. And I would have probably, and now we know that and we're a lot better, but I probably would have built our team in a different way from the beginning if I had known how much people managing our job would be. Because, I mean, once you start to get past a certain point, my job becomes less, and hers too, less of running a business and building a business and creating a business, and more of how do we manage all 100 people that work for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that can be tough too, especially for, I mean, just experiencing, you're having the pie and being to the stores and knowing, I know Megan a lot better than I know Mary, but I know two of you are perfectionists, right? So how do you do, like, when you have to let something go and you have to let somebody else do it, and sometimes they do it a way that you don't like or wouldn't do yourself, like how do you manage that, and how do you deal with that?
I think it's different depending on the thing. I mean, for example, answering customer emails is something that I've always done myself, and it got to where it was overwhelming. And so like a year ago, I let a person who'd worked for me for 2 years start answering customer emails, but only if they BCC'd me on every single one of them. So that's probably a good example of how not to do it. But I think that there's a lot of coaching. Like, you can't get angry with somebody for not making the exact decision that you would have made. But I think that you can coach and just say, like, hey, that's not how we're going to do this. And there are many times where somebody will do something. If you use the customer email as an example, there are times when someone will answer a customer email in a way that I wouldn't do it, but it still works. So you let them continue on that course, and then either they learn something from it, or at the end of it, you can say, hey, for consistency's sake, we carried that through. Now we're going to do it this way. And that was hard to learn too. I mean, there were a lot of times whenever I'd be like, why can't you just do it this way? I mean, but there's a lot of stuff too that you don't have to wash dishes exactly the way that I do. Are the dishes getting cleaned properly? Cool. That's fine. You have to let go a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Pick the battles.
Yeah.
I learned a lot. If you read one of like the early recipes I wrote, it like just does not make much sense. And to me, it made sense. And then I would hand it to somebody and be like, how did you misinterpret that to mean this? And like learned a lot about the clarity of communication, and a lot of my, like, I've just got out from under this, building all this training material for the kitchen, because that's a lot of making sure people are doing it right. And the same thing, it's like, what matters, what doesn't. Like, I don't care which scoop you use, but if you're, like, here's what does matter, here's what can totally ruin something, and making sure people are properly trained on the things that matter.
Yeah, because I could, especially in pie making, I've made some pies myself, but I know that it's just very particular, like, as far as overworking the dough, and you don't, like, the butter has to be the right temperature.
Lots of checks and balances, and you have to put in place.
Yeah. It's not just like, oh, put these two ingredients in the bowl together. It's like how you put them together, what temperatures they are. It's
all techniques. So, and that is a tough thing. That's the hardest thing to teach people in the kitchen, is making the dough and rolling it out.
Yeah, and when
it's hard.
People say stuff about the price of our pie still, which we've only raised the price about 25 cents since we started pricing it in 2011, so it's not too bad inflation-wise. But when people complain, I'm like, okay, the apple pie, from the time that we start measuring flour for the crust to the time that it comes out of the oven and it's done, is 12 human hours of time to make. And it's ridiculous. And so when people are like, well, $40, I'm like, well, think about the food costs. If you went to the grocery store and bought 10 apples and then had to peel them and all that, and then you made the caramel from scratch and all that, by the time you get there making it at home, you're almost at $40 anyway in just food costs. And then you think about having to pay somebody to make it for you or make it yourself. And then you're like, oh, I would rather pay somebody. So it's like, clearly we don't pay $40 in food costs for an apple pie because we're making so many, but there's so much technique involved. There's a lot of time involved in pie. And then there's a lot of ingredients that go into it too. But I think to go back to your other question, there's just no way to get everybody to do things exactly the way that you want them.
It's an ongoing thing you have to address.
Yeah. And pick your battles. And then, and I think if you give people room to make mistakes, for example, if somebody has an accident in one of our vans, we don't like censure them immediately and be like, oh, you can't drive anymore, and now you have to pay our insurance bill or what. And there's none of that. People make mistakes. We make mistakes. So we figure if we extend grace to our people that are working for us, then they'll extend it back to us.
Well, I feel I've used this. There's different ways to describe business ownership, but one of the ones that I look at is to say that you can make more money as an owner than as an employee. That's possible, but you can also lose a lot more money. So it's really it's the owner says, hey, I'm going to take on all this risk, and as an employee, I'm going to remove that risk from you, and you're going to get a paycheck, and you don't, if you screw something up, you don't have to pay for it. But I think that's, there's some people who want that. And I think that's a great trade-off. There's some people that say, you know what, I just don't want to worry about this. I just want to show up, do a job. And I'm not saying just just at your business, but every business, as lawyers, as doctors. I mean, there's all types of people that don't want that piece of it. Whereas I feel like, if you own a business, you want to, there's something in you that motivates you enough to say, I'm willing to take on that risk. And sometimes it's just, it's just money. Someone says, hey, I can only make, $100,000 doing this, but if I open this business, I can make $1 million, whatever. But there's something else in there that motivates you to take on that risk. Mm-hmm. So that was sort of a story and a long lead in to turn it over to you guys, to you gals, and say, what is it that made that worth it to you?
I think part of it is that we didn't, it was not a huge risk when we opened our first pie shop. It grew into more risk as we grew, but it felt a little bit more comfortable after we had proven that the concept was like valid, I feel like. But for me, it's more that we wanted to build something. I wanted to build something where I had control of the reins, and it was important for me to make a place where people were happy to come to work. And I mean, people aren't going to be happy to come to work every day, and no job is perfect, but I wanted to do the very best that I could to be a good employer. And I would say that a lot of people leave here thinking that. Not all, but a lot. So that was a big thing for me. There's a shortage of good employers in this world.
Yeah. And I think that's really that's one of the only variables you can control is, so people say, oh, well, business owners create jobs and they're the market of the engine of the economy. I'm like, well, somebody would do it, right? Like consumers are going to spend money. Like someone's going to figure out how to give them something they're going to spend money on. And so to really differentiate, I agree with that. That's really the only thing you can do to kind of make the world a better place is to say, okay, I'm going to create a great place to work. Yeah. So
a way that we do that is that our first year, we got so many donation requests. I tallied up. It was like $33,000. We had given everybody one pie. It was like $33,000 worth of donation requests. And I was like, we're just not going to do this. I don't as there's so many worthy causes out there that we could donate pie to. So we don't, we put aside money every month that we would have donated in pie, and our staff can apply for that money, like say their tires blow out or something and they have an unexpected expense.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. So it was like, okay, well, that's really, I mean, like you said, I'm not going to make the world a better place donating $50 worth of pie to Susan G. Komen, but I am going to make the world a better place by making sure that my employee who needed a $50 tire can have that, and it's not going to throw off their finances for the next 6 months.
Yeah. They're not going to have to go get a payday loan. And
yeah.
Whatever. So Mary, for you, do you feel like is it a creative expression? Do you feel like you get some of that out of it? Is it something else? I don't want to lead you too much.
Well, originally for me it was a creative. That's why I wanted to do it, for creative expression. And I love hospitality. That's like how I connect with people, is serving them, making things for them. You know, that's kind of just something I was passionate. Yeah, something I was passionate about. I'm kind of an introvert, so it's always like a gateway. Like, bring treats and you'll make friends. But I got to be creative doing it. So that was initially, I think, what drew me to it. But now it's a lot of things. It's challenging and fulfilling in a way that working for somebody else wouldn't be, I think, because we do so many different things and have to learn so many different things, which is the frustrating part. But also, like you said, like you have these moments where you're like, I just learned how to do something that I didn't think I could learn how to do. And you get to create opportunities for other people and teach them things and
let people who might not have the opportunity, you give them the opportunity to do a bigger job than maybe they would get. Like, we worked our way up from nothing, so we know that people can come work here. And even though they're like, a lot of it, I feel like society is ageist in the way that it's sexist, a lot, even more ageist than sexist in some ways. And I remember when we first started and we were in our early 20s and people were constantly telling us, like, well, you're too young. How are you going to do this? You're going to flake. You know, it was right in the middle of like the millennials are lazy slob situation. And so, but we always give people opportunities. Like, I don't care who you are. I don't care what you look like. I don't care how old you are or what your gender is. Or what you ascribe to. Do you think you can do this job? Do you want to learn? Are you open to that? Then do it. And so we've been able to give people opportunities. I think that really fun. Mary's especially good at that. She sees the potential in people.
Learned a lot from people who come in here too. So it's rewarding and fulfilling in a lot of ways that I didn't expect for it to be. In the same ways it was challenging, I guess.
It's super rewarding when you see someone who's, and I just, now I'm going to say young, but lacking experience. Someone who's like, you know, who's younger, and you see that thing in them, and you bring them in, and then you see them develop, and you know, it's and
then they just crush it, and you're like, yes.
Yeah, we're one of the few bakeries that will hire people with no experience, because I didn't have bakery experience when we started, and I've learned that, like, I can have a culinary student who does a terrible job, and then somebody who does an amazing job because they're interested and they love it and they want to learn. So,
and the culinary student is going to have a preconceived notion, and when you tell them they're doing it wrong, they're probably going to be.
Yeah, I don't know who in culinary school is telling everybody that they're going to make $100,000 a year out of the but somebody's doing.
There's a expectation there that is. It's hard. You have to kind of manage those with a lot of culinary students.
Yeah, I think that the part of it in the restaurant industry is the like celebrity chef culture, and even our friends that we have that are chefs that are celebrity chef mode. That most of them work harder than anybody. More hours and weirder hours and all that. And it's interesting to have people who just are fresh out of culinary school who are like, I'll work 35 hours a week. And then, you know. So
I kind of skipped this question. This is maybe a question that would have been better in the beginning, but I didn't want to avoid it. So I know that you had you've told me previously about a conversation that you had with your landlord at the Bishop Arts location. And the landlord said, this is a crazy idea. I don't think it'll work. And I think a lot of people probably would have shared that sentiment before you opened the doors. How did you know it was going to work? Or did you know it was going to work?
So I knew it was going to work because I had run the numbers on it. And I really like doing Microsoft Excel. It's like it's my happy place. I love it. And I don't like to do the books. Like, I don't like QuickBooks. I like Excel. And so I run the numbers on it, and we really didn't have to sell a whole lot of pie to make it. But we also had like 6 contingency plans. Mary was like, I can make cookies, and we can sell those behind the scenes.
Like all these wholesale options.
Yeah, wholesale.
That
we've got all these options. And so I feel like it was we didn't know, but we knew we could hustle through it. I think that's part of it. We trusted each other, and we knew that if things were not going great, and there's been many times when things were not going great, we knew that we could figure out a way to hustle around it. part of that is that we're both really entrepreneurial, and we were like, we can hustle it.
So I'm just gonna pull some more information, a longer answer out of you here. So, I mean, didn't you look around and say, well, if pie is such a great business, why are there not pie shops on every corner?
Yeah.
And how did you kind of justify that to yourself?
So I think part of it was that I didn't realize how difficult it was going to be to scale up on making a lot of pie. But I think there's a yes and no to that question. So yes, if it was great business, there'd be pie on every corner, but nobody had seen that hole in the market. So that's where I had a lot of confidence, was like, okay, if we have something that tastes delicious, and every person who tried Mary's pies were like, these are really good. These are good. They're better than good. We spent a year just putting pie in people's mouth, basically. And so I knew we had a great thing, and I was like, I mean, you can get a kind of nasty key lime pie that's mostly whipped cream at some restaurants sometimes, and they're going to charge you $12 for it. Yeah. So I'm like, I think if we can get out for $6 or so, people are going to be happy about it, and it worked that way. I mean, it was yes, and like there's not any pie shop, so this could be a really big risk, and there's not pie shop because there's no market for it, or it could be there's a hole in the market and we saw it, and that's what happened. We saw the hole. Yeah,
I feel like at the Bishop Arts location, you guys are the dessert menu for every restaurant. People are like, okay, like, do you want to see a dessert menu? It's like, no, we're going to Emporium.
We're going to get some pie.
It's a fun thing. You get to walk down the street, see what's going on, and everything. So
well, and it's kind of great too, because you have like there are several different really amazing restaurants where you can get a full meal and you get really great dessert. Where there's a lot of places where I go to get dessert. Obviously, they're not the pie shop, but I think that it provides kind of a service, because most restaurants don't make, unless they have a pastry chef on site, which there's only a couple of those in Bishop Arts. Most of the faster service restaurants, it doesn't give them any extra for them to have an extra 30 minutes at that table with serving dessert when they could turn that table. So that kind of helps a little bit with their serving staff. But you also have the opportunity to like walk to Dude Sweet Chocolate and get chocolate, and then walk to the pie shop and get pie. And so there's like this multiple step of dessert that I think has added like 10 pounds to every person who lives around. And I think people like that. It just seems decadent to walk and get dessert somewhere. If you can pour yourself off the bar stool in time.
I think we're just a few minutes over, so I apologize about that. But it's been a great conversation. Loved learning about pie, and so thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Thanks for talking to us.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.